Ever since I started exploring gravure content on my channel, I've been quietly on the hunt for lots of different types of gravure content. I've explored the past and current gravure put out by the members of IROC-Z. I've explored a couple of gravure videos released by Mina Satsuki. I've looked at gravure by Ogura Alice and gravure DVDs released in the late 90s. But one thing I've been on the hunt for was something even more. I want to get 80s gravure on VHS. Yeah, some of the gravure I covered did get a VHS release, but I wanted something that was more authentic to the time, when the best tech one could reasonably gather was a VHS or beta camcorder, go on location and shoot direct-to-video material on a shoestring budget. Last year, I did try that, and twice actually. Both of them backfired though, when I found out what they really were. Now they sit as parts of my VHS collection. Anyway, I was searching around casually one night when I found what I could only describe as a tape that was put on auction specifically for me. Mariko Kaziwara's Peach Nectar Gravure tape was that tape, because not only did it sport a very 80s Japan aesthetic, but also looking on the back, there's a thumbnail of her posing with a Camaro. When you mix cars and gravure, you're just baiting me at that point. So before we go any further, I want to say that yes, I know this video was released in 1990, so it's not 80s gravure. But just because it's not from the 80s doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't match the 80s aesthetic. 1990 is still kind of the 1980s in a way. I like to see it like how people see the year 2000, where the year 2000 is considered the bonus level of the 1990s. I think a similar case can be made for 1990 being the bonus level of the 1980s. Is that a lame excuse? Yes. Will I eventually get my hands on an 80s gravure tape? Yes. The search hasn't ended yet? Absolutely not. But I still think this tape is worth talking about because there are some things about it that are really fascinating. Kaziwara Mariko is the star of this video, and there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of information out there about her. She started her career during high school in the early 80s when she was scouted by Young Jump, a popular weekly manga magazine. And after she entered college, she started regular entertainment activities. Her career seemed to peak from 1985 to 1991, and she eventually left the entertainment industry sometime after being in the drama Sales Lady wa Nani o Mita in 1993. Because of having such a relatively short stint in entertainment, I think that perhaps nowadays she's relatively obscure. Peach Nectar seems to be a pretty big part of her entertainment legacy, however, since in 2008 it was re-released on DVD. I don't have the DVD, so we're just gonna have to stick with my VHS rip, but hey, VHS is the sought-after aesthetic now, right? It shouldn't bother anyone. The video itself is pretty interesting. If I could summarize it as one whole experience, it tells a long, overarching story where it has you spend an entire day or afternoon with her. The only exception is the beginning. The beginning literally starts with a bang as she walks into a shooting range and starts popping off rounds with a revolver and with what appears to be a 9mm of some kind. I don't know a lot about handgun models, so don't at me. We then follow her outside at night overlooking a city, posing next to the aforementioned Camaro and against the backdrop of the city. This whole section is pretty much entirely detached from the rest of the video. My guess is that this part of the video functions as an intro, but it's a little confusing since you'd think that if it was the intro, the title card would follow it into the video proper, but the title card is before it. In any event, the video proper starts when Mariko pulls up to the park in her Camaro. What makes this pretty cool for Japan is that it isn't just any Camaro, but it's an IROC-Z. I know it's dumb of me to harp on this Camaro bit, but in my defense, this is the only time the Camaro is at least partially visible in the video. What makes this Camaro cool for Japan is that the vast majority of the Camaros or muscle cars you see in Japan are all typically the turbo 4 cylinders or V6 variants. But the IROC-Z was the top tier Camaro for that particular generation, with a 5+ liter V8. Might not sound like much, but owning an American car in Japan is kind of baller. And the fact that this is the Americaniest of American cars of its time, well, that makes it even cooler. Anyway, car talk aside, this part of the video takes place in a park, and the afternoon with Mariko begins from here. I don't want to do a complete recap just because there are a lot of different scenes varying in length, going on for anywhere from almost 1 minute to several minutes, so yeah. One of the biggest things I noticed about this video is that the escalation of the Gravure content is much slower than what we've looked at in the past on this channel. In the videos from the 90s, they pretty much gave all they intended to give away very early on, and the Gravure by Mina Satsuki had a collection of scenes where each individual scene had its own escalation before the process starts over again. Peach Nectar goes for escalation that happens throughout the runtime of the video. The scenes all tell a continual story, and as the story progresses, so does the extent of the Gravure. So the beginning would be Mariko in outfits that are pretty regular, cutting to her more dressed up, to her lounging around in more comfortable outfits, to eventually being in swimsuits, and eventually wearing essentially nothing. I remember when I was first getting into Gravure content, I went in with the expectation that this was how all Gravure would be, and got so used to how different to that expected formula they were that when coming to something like this where it meets that expectation to the T, it's suddenly remarkable. Funny how that works. This might sound surprising to some people, but we don't get anything resembling anything even like a swimsuit until about exactly the halfway point. The escalation is teased in the previous scene, but things are far from given away from the beginning, unlike any of what I've looked at on this channel so far. Unlike a number of other Gravure videos I've looked at in the past, one of the elements from this video that are missing is the fact that there is never a moment where context for any given scene is introduced through any kind of acting or dialogue. Every scene seamlessly transitions from one to another with nothing more than an establishing shot and a new outfit. Now, I don't know if it's the quality of the tape or the reading head on my VCR or my VCR's tracking, the video output, or whatever, but I found it interesting with the way Mariko looks in this video. Her skin tone is pretty dark, honestly. More natural look for a Japanese person than not. I point this out because if you look at modern Gravure or modern Japanese talents in general, usually they are portrayed with lighter skin tones. This might sound like whatever, but apparently there's an idea in Japan in the last couple of decades or so that lighter skin tones are ideal and more beautiful. So looking back at a video like this where the exposure and color grading weren't messed with to make her skin look lighter really goes to show just how quickly beauty standards can change over time. Now I have to say that the video really feels like it loses steam at the end. This has a lot to do with the fact that when she isn't wearing anything, they really had to take care not to show much. So what we end up getting a lot of is close-ups of her staring into the camera. There were a lot of rules when it came to Gravure content like this and what they could and couldn't show at the time. that doesn't just go with direct-to-video stuff, but even certain movies had to contain certain amounts of censorship as well. It was a very different time back then, and because of that, I found that I was beginning to tune out during the section which was supposed to be the ultimate climax of the whole video. Musically, this video is pretty amazing. Remember before when I said that this video carries a very distinct 1980s aesthetic despite being released in 1990? The music is a big reason why that is. The old keyboard samples and the tracks that seem to make references to classical pieces of music really give this video a 1980s flair. On top of that, Mariko's hairstyles here feel very 1980s. Although I'll admit, I don't know how much exactly changed in terms of hairstyle between the 80s and the 90s, since there are some models featured in games later in the 90s, which feature similar hairstyles. But when I look at Mariko in many of the scenes here, especially when her hair is down, it looks very 80s to me. So yeah, Peach Nectar is definitely an interesting piece of gravure content from the once futuristic year of 1990. Am I glad I got it? Actually, yes I am. I don't know what it is, but besides seeing Mariko driving around in an IROC-Z Camaro and having a good appreciation for the high leg look, I think the aesthetics of this alone serve as a great time capsule into the world of gravure, or image videos as this calls itself, and I really think seeing it in its original VHS quality only helps add to that effect. The world was such a different place at that time. The recession, which would cause Japan so much grief, had yet to happen, and while the signs of the downfall were looming pretty clearly at this time, it was really the last time this cultural atmosphere would be able to live free and breathe easy. This video really reflects that in a lot of ways visually, and the attitude of this video overall really does feel like it comes from a vastly different era than even the gravure DVDs I've looked at from the same decade. I think that's what ultimately makes this video a unique and special one. So yeah, there it is. Those are my thoughts about Peach Nectar from 1990. Let me know what you thought about this whole thing in the comments below. Do you know about Mariko? Have you seen any of the stuff she was in? Let me know in the comments below. I was surprised to hear about Jun Matsuda, but then I realized how famous she actually was back in the day. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how people react to this. So anyway, this is just the outro for the end card here. I'll see you next time with something new, and in the meantime...